Yeah. Welcome to another edition of Mark's Inspiration, The Power is Within podcast. Glad you could join me here as always. Got a special guest tonight, Rosemond P. Cherubin. Are we lagging here? Or is that just on there? I guess it's just there. Check me out on Instagram at Mark's Inspiration. And if you'd like to get my help personally, marksinspiration.com is my website, or you can contact me directly, marksinspirationalguidance at gmail.com. Follow me on Rumble at Mark's Inspiration. Special guest tonight, Rosemond P. Cherubin. He wrote the book, True Male Nature 101. I'm going to bring him on here in a minute. It's an excellent book. I read it here a couple weeks ago. And it's actually for young men from single mothers, but it's just really great straight across the board for everyone, not just for young men from single mother households. But let's bring him on.
Yes, sir. Peace, peace. Appreciate you for having me on.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm good. I need a little more.
Good.
I got to get a little volume here, Rosemond.
All right.
A little bit more. Okay. Yeah, how's everything going?
Everything's great. God is good. I can't complain.
Yeah, man, I love the way you dress. There's another
thank you.
guy. What's his name? I'm at a loss now.
Lucario?
Anyway. No, LD? Is that
LDA. Oh, my man, LDA.
Yeah,
Lawrence Seattle. Oh, yeah. Lawrence Seattle got some style.
dressed.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
makes me want to go.
That man has some style.
Makes me want to go shopping. I'm telling you. I'm a firm believer in dressing. I mean, people just don't dress. I mean, my mom always dressed good. My dad did. My dad worked blue collar, but he always wore a blue collar shirt and slacks when he went to work, even though he was a machinist. And mom always wore either a skirt or slacks, and they taught me to dress nice. So I've always dressed good, and sometimes
I have a story on that. I have a story on that too, because you said your father was a blue collar, but he still dressed accordingly,
right.
Like he dressed up. My father he's recently retired New York City cab driver. So when you think of cab driver, you're not thinking of anything special. But my father would go to work every day as a cab driver with suit, literally in a suit and tie, looking like he's a Wall Street businessman. So for me as a young child, seeing my father, knowing the occupation that he does, seeing how his other colleagues, the way his colleagues dress compared to the way he dressed, it showed me that regardless of what your job title is, what your occupation is, you are a man first, and your representation, precedes you.
Right. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. People don't understand. I mean, people say, "Oh, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover." Well, I agree, but the point is, people do. The first impression, they look at you, the way you present yourself. It makes all the difference in the world. When I travel, like in the airports, I almost always wear a jacket, dress nice, and you get treated differently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
absolutely.
It may not be fair, it may not be fair, it may not be just, but that's just the way it is.
Absolutely. What I tell people is that there's levels to everything. One thing that people will say is, never assume, which is true. But the other level to it is, once you've had a certain amount of experiences, you get to a point where you can't assume certain things. Now, what I tell people is, when you get to that second level where you can assume certain things, what I say is, don't make those assumptions or take those assumptions as if they're facts. What I do is put a tab on it. I'll assume something, not take it as a fact, but just put it on the shelf. Like, okay, if that does occur, or if I am right, I can remember that it was at this moment. I recognize X, Y, Z.
Well, and two, a lot of guys, they don't realize that, especially when they're meeting women, that people project out what you are, and a lot of it has to do with the way the way you dress. A lot of times projects the way you feel about yourself. Not always, but a lot of the times it does. So you project out this certain image to people. I mean, and when you dress sharp, I don't know, to me it shows self-respect. I mean, there are people who are extremely successful and they don't dress well, but in general, just it shows a sign of self-respect, I believe.
Absolutely. And it may also show a sign of discipline, because, in order to dress a certain way, you can't just get up and just figure it out. Like, you have to actually be disciplined to basically know what you're doing. And most importantly, in addition to, how it represents yourself, I think it also exudes your confidence, because most males don't know how to dress. I mean, not even don't know how to dress. They're too scared to dress. They're afraid to actually put colors on, because that's something that I wrote in my book. I wrote about, expressing your feminine side, and people may instantly think, something sexual, and that's not it at all. Because
Yeah.
understand that every person has feminine and masculine energy. So
Right.
as a man, people will believe that a real man doesn't express his feminine side. But what I say in my book, that a real man is able to balance his masculine and feminine side. And that doesn't mean that the masculine and feminine are 50-50%. It could be 80-20. But point being, if you're a full self-actualized man, then you should be able to express both sides. And one of the examples that I gave as far as expressing your feminine side is simply wearing different colors, whether it be a purple, lilac, whatever it is. But you have
Yeah.
guys nowadays that'll say, well, if you wear pink, then you're not a real man, or you might be on the fence. Not necessarily.
I got a pink vest upstairs and a pink shirt too.
Yeah, I was gonna wear a
had a
pink
few
shirt
pink
also, but I
shirts.
was like, I was gonna wear a pink shirt, but I wore it for another interview. So I was like, you know what? But I really wanted to wear it for this one too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds good.
Hey, real quick, I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Afi
Sure.
and Alpha Villains, because they spoke highly of you. They said you gave them nothing but the utmost hospitality
Oh,
when they met you. So I just wanted
yeah.
to say that I just wanted to express that to you, that they spoke nothing but good things about you.
Well, great. Great. Yeah. I appreciate them guys coming. I think a lot of them too. Appreciate the good referral there. Actually, I got your book right here in front of me. I have some highlighted points I want to talk about. And the first part, of course, is the forward by Effie Kingdom. I'll read just a paragraph of it here as he talks about it. He said, "What is a real man? Is it someone who can treat a lady right? Is it someone who can provide for his family? Yes, but in reality, too many boys just grow up, have sex, and have a family. That doesn't make you a real man. A real man has integrity. He has principles that can actually lead him to success and to his purpose. Many sons from single mother homes have problems in their lives because they are not good leaders. Who is to blame? Most of these boys have not been taught what it means to be a real man." Now, what do you consider a real man?
A real man. See, we have to distinguish between what a grown male is and what a real man is. First, let me just describe a grown male, because it's very simple. A grown male, another way to describe a grown male is just to simply say he's an adult boy. He's an
Yeah,
adult boy. Just because someone reaches a certain age doesn't mean that they've reached a certain level of maturity, and doesn't mean that they've reached the level of manhood. So
right.
to answer your question, a real man is a grown male, but the biggest difference is between a regular grown male or adult boy and a real man is the fact that a real man can control his emotions. He can set his emotions aside. And most importantly, he can use logic and reason to reach the best outcome in every situation that he's in. So basically, an adult male, or aka a real man, what a real man is a grown male who basically knows how to control his emotions, who knows how to use logic, who knows how to because as a leader, there are times where you have to put your emotions to the side to make the best decision for the situation that you're in. But a lot of people will be like, well, it's not fair to these two people right here, and the 100 have to suffer because of that. But no, a leader knows that sometimes you have to sacrifice for the bigger good. So again, a real man basically is a grown male that can control his emotions, can set his emotions aside, and most importantly, can use logic and reason when he deals with his everyday situations and the way that he thinks.
Yeah, I know there's a big push out there for men to be vulnerable. The definition of that word is to vulnerable is to be susceptible to attack, and they take that a little bit too far because, like you said, a man can control his emotions, and I believe a man should be able to control his emotions. But sometimes when I speak about that, people take that as stuffing your emotions. They take stoicism as not being able to express your emotions,
No.
and that's not what it is at all. For
Mm-mm.
example, if somebody breaks in the house right now, I have to get up and deal with that. Maybe I'm afraid, but I overcome that emotion of fear. And let's say something happens to one of my kids. Let's say he breaks one of my kids' arms. Sure, I'm upset about it, but I don't have time to sit there and feel those emotions. I have to take action. And that's not at all stuffing your emotions. I believe a real man, I express my emotions a lot of times, but in my room by myself or
Mm-hmm.
with my mentor or a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
I believe a real man knows the time and the place to express his emotions. It's not about stuffing them, it's about expressing them at the proper times. It's not that he doesn't feel them in times of crisis, he just knows how to control them. And it seems like there's a lot of confusion about that in today's age where men are like thinking, they have to wear their emotions on their sleeve, and if they don't, then they're suppressing them, and they're going to have trauma later on. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of the reasons why I titled the book what I titled it. The subtitle, the title is True Male Nature 101, but the subtitle is How Sons of Single Mothers Can Think Like a Real Man. Now, the reason I titled that specific part, how sons of single mothers and think like a real man. So that's a great question that you asked, because I work in a hospital, and I work 80% of the people that I work with are women, and I work around men also, 20%. So one day I went around asking my coworkers, male and female, who's more emotional, typically, a male or a female, males or females? And ironically, a lot of the people said males, and I was like, wait. I'm thinking maybe they didn't understand the question. Let me flip the other side of the coin to the same question. I said, all right, if you believe that, okay, so who's the more logical sex? Is it the male or the female? And about 50% or 51% were like, well, females. And I was just baffled, like, what world am I in? Because this was like an alley-oop question. Like, why would they think that? And I'm a thinking man. So I started thinking back and I've also been studying society, people in general, since I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old. So I've just been studying people for a long time. So the conclusion that I came to, and also I worked in as a tutor in homes with young boys from the ages of kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. So I was actually in these homes, seeing them interact with their mothers, single mothers, so on and so forth. So the conclusion that I came to is, to answer your question, the reason why people are more emotional, why society's asking for men to be more vulnerable, which like you said, to be more susceptible to attack, is because now it's like the mindset of society is that the energy of the mindset of today's society is feminine. So everything is seen through the lens of a female. So like I said before, people ask me, or something that I thought is a lot of the reasons for why I am the way I am, because I honestly consider myself a real man. Like, I've been this way for at least 15 years, right? And the reason I know that I've learned these skills is because it's from observing my father. My father never actually sat me down and taught me any of these traits or any of these skills. So I thought to myself, okay, we have a lot of males out here who did not grow up with a father or a man figure in the home. So I said to myself, if my father wasn't in the home and he was just taking all those times that I observed him in whatever situation, whether it be dealing with my mother, dealing with somebody at the grocery store, dealing with somebody at the gas station, being at a party, being in a social event, if I plucked him out, because again, I learned from his observation, what would fill that void? Dealing with a conflict, debating, whatever the case may be. Where would I learn to do that? Because again, nobody sat me down. And the conclusion I came to is that I would observe my mother, or my grandmother, or my aunt, or my teacher at school, who probably is a woman, or my principal. So bottom line, what I'm saying is, men don't do, even if I didn't have my father, I'm 41. So I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, so on and so forth. So even if my father wasn't necessarily in the home, I at least had examples of what a masculine figure or a man figure looked like or acted like, whether it be Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone in their movies, even though they are fictional characters,
right?
At least it's a template that I can go off of. Whereas now there are no masculine figures, because those same masculine figures that I said could be my template today would be deemed as toxically masculine men.
Yeah.
So it's like they're basically beating down the masculine man, but when the threat arises, who's the first person they're looking for? A real man.
Yeah, for sure. I don't watch TV, haven't for years, but my daughter was watching a TV program just this evening in the kitchen there, and I happened to look at it, and it was some show about the hospital. I watched 5 minutes of it, and it was obvious the women were running the show. It was just, and the men were supplicating to them. It's just really, because that, like you said, you grew up in the 80s. Well, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So we had role models like Steve McQueen, the rifleman. I can't remember what his name was, and combat, different shows like that, where the men were the leaders and the men were giving their lives, and men were risking their lives for the women. But now the movies and some of those show the 104-pound woman kicking the 240-pound security guard, or
taking blows and everything. Like,
I mean, it's so unrealistic, but when the kids watch this and they grow up with it, I've had guys tell me I had this one guy tell me, he said, well, a woman can do anything a man can do if she has enough time. Well, that's a contradictory statement there as it is. Women have their
Yeah.
certain characteristics that we don't have, like nurturing, loving. They can have babies. I have no problem admitting that. But yet, so many women nowadays, because I think they're programmed by the narrative of society, believe that they're equal to a man in the physical respect. I believe everybody's equal in the eyes of God. I'm not saying that, but we're just not the same. We're not equal. But many people get offended when you actually, what I just said right there, offends some people. And I think that goes back to what you said about the feminine energy, because you can't hardly say anything where somebody's not offended by it. I mean, I get some hate sometimes on, more often than not, about things I say. I've been called misogynist only because I'll express my traditional view of, I like to have a woman in the house to take care of the kids. I'm out there working. And even that is called misogynistic and prejudice against women. So yeah, it's really different today.
And it's and without, let me say this also, because people might say, okay, they may call me misogynist because of the things that I say about women and the way society is now and so on and so forth, society having a feminine mindset. But I will say this, because I believe I said this in my book also, you have to put it on men, because it's men are the leaders, women only follow. So whatever, some might say, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it the fact that, women needed their rights first, or was it a man that just, folded and just gave women rights? Regardless of what it is, it had to be a man who was in leadership, who little by little, trickle by trickle, whether it be his wife in his ear, his daughter in his ear, whatever the case may be, that male in charge, notice I didn't say man, that grown male in charge allowed his emotions to get the best of him. And this is the reason why we're in the situation that we're in now. It's either that, or again, like I said, there's levels to this, or it's the fact that the way that it is now, it allows America to make money, because America is a corporation. So the more that it is a feminist society, the more consumership can grow and become bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Well, what inspired you to write about this topic here?
Well, first of all, I wrote the first book that I wrote is called Hacker, and it's called Hacker: True Female Nature 101. Now, the thing with Hacker, it describes female nature, and doesn't just describe, your girlfriend or anything like that. It, not just your girlfriend. Describe your mother, your sister, your teacher, the police officer, the judge, any woman that you can meet that has a Western mindset. The reason I wrote that book just quickly is because, again, I've been studying people since I was young, but I've always been fascinated by women. And luckily enough, I've been blessed to be selected by women since I was young. So I've had the opportunity to have a lot of experiences with women. And in doing so, especially after traveling abroad to different foreign countries, I started to notice a pattern. And I was like, women are the same, but just a few degrees different, So, and then I started a YouTube channel, started counseling guys, and they kept asking about women. So I decided to write a book about that. So once I wrote the book about women, the women were coming to me like, hey, you could write a book about women. Why don't you write a book about men? I started thinking like, why should I? A man knows what a man is. But then I started really thinking about the 25-year-old males in my job that I know, the 28-year-olds that I know, my own nephew. And I was like, you know what? A lot of these young males really don't know what it is to be a real man. And then my greatest example is my younger brother. He's 35 now. And I've told him multiple times, I said, listen, young bro, when you're ready to be a real man, holler at me and I'll give you the lessons. He's never come to me. So this when I realized, you're like, you know what? Being a man is not easy, because another quote that I tell my younger brother and my nephew is, the hardest thing that I've ever achieved and maintained is becoming a man and stepping into my manhood. Because to be a man is not, first of all, it's not easy to reach that level. And it's another thing to maintain that level, because manhood is about consistency. So to answer your question, the reason I wrote the book is because in addition to everything I said, I also heard a lot of women saying to young males who didn't have fathers, like, well, if you were a real man, you would take care of me and my 3 kids by 4 different baby daddies. If you were a real man, then you would date an overweight woman, because that's what a real man does.
Yeah,
but these young males,
that's what they try to tell you to step up. Yeah.
But these young males don't have an example to be like, no, this is what a real man is supposed to do. So they really step back and think like, well, my mom says that's what I'm supposed to do. My aunt says I'm supposed to do. My big sister said the same thing. So I mean, why would they steer me wrong? Like, they love me. So I guess that's the way. Then you got TV promoting this, and romantic comedies and music and all this other stuff. So I understand why these young males are acting the way that they are, because they're bombarded with this programming. So I decided, even though and like I told After, I didn't even write this book to make money. I want it out there as a reference so that if a single mother doesn't know what it is to raise a man or what a real man is, if a young boy is confused as to, well, what they say I'm not supposed to show my emotion. What should I do? And instead of, I literally have a section called emotional intelligence, because you'll have people in the quote unquote manosphere that'll say emotional intelligence is stupid, it doesn't exist, so on and so forth. Anyone who says that, I believe, is exhibiting ignorance, because just think of the term emotional intelligence. You have to be is being intelligent about your emotions. We are humans. Humans have emotions. We may express them differently between male and female, but humans have emotions. So males, that's why it was very important for me to include that in the book, as far as talking about having a male side, feminine side, what a masculine frame is, expressing your feminine side, because that is very confusing to a lot of young males, because when they think of feminine side, again, they're thinking of, LGBTQ. That's not the case. Just me simply wearing this hat and a shirt like this is me expressing my feminine side.
Yeah, masculinity is almost beat down like there's something wrong with it. And as you know as well as I do, that kids are raised up mainly, well, they're raised up by their mother or daycare workers, which are predominantly women. Then they go to school. So they are actually taught or programmed to submit and supplicate and seek a woman's approval until they're out of school. Then if they go to college, I'm not sure how many teachers are in college or what they have for men, the stats there, but so they spend most of their life having to seek the approval of a woman. And as you know as well as I do, if you go out there in the dating world and try to and think you're going to get a woman by seeking her approval,
Good
that
luck.
just doesn't
Good
work
luck.
out well. Immediate disrespect and disdain, and it just turns a woman off.
And the thing is, when they have their mothers or their grandmothers or their sisters, they go to them for dating advice. And the woman will tell them what you just said. Well, be a nice guy. Bring her flowers on the first date. And again, they see this in the movies. They may hear this in music. So they're like, you know what?
Right.
That might be right. And then they keep running into a wall. And then that's why I even wrote in my book, pornography is bad for you. Let me say this for anybody who doesn't know. We have an epidemic. I'm gonna use the term loosely, but we have an epidemic where we have young males in their early 20s experiencing erectile dysfunction.
I've heard that.
Needing to use pills in order to be with the woman sexually. Now, guys might think, well, how does porn affect that? Like, how's that? Long story short, because I did a video on this also. When a male watches a lot of pornography, he's training his brain to think that and watch how crude I describe this. He's training his brain to think that sex is simply looking at a bunch of colors on a screen. Okay? When I say colors, of course, it's a picture on the screen, it's a man and a woman, so on and so forth. But your brain is just a screen with colors. It happens to look like two people having sex, but bottom line, it's a screen. You're basically just using one sense. Maybe you might have it on mute because you don't want nobody hearing you. So you're just looking, you don't even hear anything, right? So if you're training your brain to just see the sex, when the guy, 21-year-old, 19-year-old, 23-year-old, actually has a woman in front of him, he's like, whoa, what's that smell? Now, that doesn't even mean it's a bad smell, but he's not used to any scents going on, body odor, regular body odor going on. He may not be used to her moans or her whatever, her perfume. He's not, that could throw the body off. He could be like, so understand, guys, the more that you watch pornography, it's messing your brain up. The other thing is that I emphasize the fact that I'm a big proponent in semen retention. I'm a big proponent in not wasting your seed. Now, that doesn't mean to never have sex, to never ejaculate ever. But what I've learned, I also need to mention that I'm a scientist. I graduated with a biology degree from Temple University in Philadelphia, PA. So with that said, I remember in one experiment lab class, we had to make DNA. I only say that to emphasize how difficult and how arduous it is to make DNA. It took up to 4 hours in the lab of just mixing and spinning. So again, I'm a thinking man. So when I made DNA, and the amount that I made was the amount of, if you were to spit a loogie on the floor, that's the amount that we made. And it took about 4 hours. So I said to myself, if it takes about that long in a lab, of course, the body's more efficient. But I said, just for that amount, it seemed like the body would go through a lot of work just to make that. And then again, I'm a scientist, so I took genetics. So I learned what's in sperm. I learned about DNA, what DNA is, what it's broken down into. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of complex structures in sperm and in semen. So I say all that to say, I also noticed that when I did ejaculate, I didn't feel the same. Like I may not feel as strong. My mental acuity wasn't as sharp.
Right.
So I started thinking like, wow, it's like when you ejaculate, it's like you are releasing your life force. And then I thought about, I'm like, you are, because you're releasing your DNA. Another place I read that you're releasing part of your cerebral spinal fluid. That's part of your brain. And I don't know if anyone knows that when sperm actually fertilizes an egg, there's a spark. So it's like the spark of God. Yeah, the spark of God. So, and what I learned in genetics is that the DNA in your sperm is the most perfect form of your DNA. So whatever abnormalities that you have within your DNA, they say survival of the fittest. So the longer you live, your DNA is constantly. That's why the most when you use sperm, you have something called spermatogenesis. So as you're creating new sperm, it's not the same exact DNA that's being created because your DNA is constantly evolving with the environment, the food you eat, so on and so forth. So with that being said, with all that being known in that particular juice, for lack of a better term, what makes you think you can let that go 5 times a day, 6 times a day, 10 times a week, and think that they don't affect you?
Yeah, it's quite extreme, and I've heard. I never was one of these guys. I know some guys, they want to be, not the porn, but they'll be with a girl 2, 3 times a day. Their girlfriend, over and over. Even if you don't believe in semen retention or that type of practice, obviously you're going to be tired because of the excitement and the energy you use. And then, like you said, if a guy gets used to watching porn, that type of stimulation when he's with a real woman, and I think that seems to be an issue today amongst young men. As you know, a lot of them will confront people, not really confront on by messenger, and the same person may say something to you by messenger, but if he met you on the sidewalk, he would walk around you. So it gives them this false sense of, actually a lot of false senses of strength, and it's not really strength at all. So
absolutely.
It amazes me some of the comments that I get from the haters sometimes. I'm like, I don't respond. I rarely respond.
But that goes back to the feminine way of thinking, is that, women strongly believe that they can say whatever or do whatever and have no consequences. That's the way a lot of these young males move in life now. I even see with some of my family members, or like back to my younger brother, certain things that he'll say, and I'll be like, yo, watch your mouth, yo. Like, you look at you, my brother, like, you don't talk to people like that. Nah, because you got me upset. That's the only reason I said, I don't care how upset you get. There's certain things you don't say to another man. So a lot of young males nowadays will use that as an excuse, like, well, no, you got me upset, and that's the reason why I said it. Or, well, if you didn't do that, then I wouldn't have done this. And no, you're responsible for your own actions. So you can't be like, well, I was upset, so you can't take it for real. You can't take it seriously. Like, but again, they're following their mother's actions. So back to my younger brother, you might say, well, you said your parents are together. They're married. Yes, they are together. They're married, so on and so forth. Both my brothers were all raised by the same parents, went to the same school, everything. But me, myself, I'm the middle brother, but I'm very different from my 2 brothers. My older brother, he is 43. My younger brother's 35. So that goes right into a part of the book that I wrote, which is talking about a rite of passage. Young males need to go through a rite of passage in order to become a man. When I came back from college, maybe after living out the house for maybe 10 years, came back home, my 2 brothers were still at home. And I would ask myself, like, yo, why do these guys act this way? Like, you guys are grown. You guys are 30, you're 25. Like, why do you act this way? Like, why are we so different? We were raised in the same house, same parents, same everything. It wasn't until I got to my late 30s, looking back, and I realized they never went through a rite of passage. Like, I left home at 17 to go to college in Philadelphia, like I stated earlier, but I had no friends, no family in the whole state of Pennsylvania. And Philadelphia, I don't know if anybody knows, it's not a smooth city. It's extremely rough, rugged, and raw, okay? So I say that to say, my time living in Philadelphia, no friends, no family. At the age of 17, I might have been 130 pounds soaking wet, you know, but I'm from New York, so I have some street smarts. But go through that experience of having experiences in the street of Philadelphia, having to deal with police, having to get an apartment out there, having to, deal with some school situation, having to be homeless. I was homeless for like 2 months, slept on the benches outside in the dorm room, so on and so forth, because I was dead set at not missing a semester.
Yeah.
So me having all those experiences away from home, growing up, learning how to talk to another man who's not your friend, who can, how they say there's always a low level threat of violence when you're speaking to another man. I learned that being away from my family, from my close friends. So coming back home 10, 11, 12 years later, with the experiences that I got from leaving home, I just thought that my brothers were having their own experiences and they had their own type of bag of gems that, we could add to the pot. That wasn't the case. It wasn't until both my brothers moved out in their 30s, and I'll say about 3 years after that, that my relationship with them became closer because they understood me more. When I would tell my brothers, like, yo, clean the bathroom, you stay here, you live here. No, my mother doesn't have to tell me to do it. I don't have to. I'm like, you're 35, you're a grown man. Nobody should have to tell you to clean your own house. Why did I know that? Because I had my own place, and if it wasn't clean, then it's gonna stay dirty.
Right.
But I understood mommy's gonna clean it, or daddy's gonna, that's my dad's house, so he's not gonna keep his house dirty. So a lot of young males need to have a rite of passage, leave home, go through experiences, good and bad. I mean, I don't want to say horrible experiences, but what they say is that God gives his greatest angels the biggest challenges. So if you can overcome these challenges, you'll see that, minus the bullshit, life is great.
Yeah, I agree. Let me hit the chat. Jawad, he says life experience is important. And that's what you just talked about here, life experiences where your brothers hadn't had that life experience yet. There are a group of people out there, and maybe it's a lot of the young people that think that you can, because I've had them go after me for this, expressing some of the things I've gone through in my life. And I was living by myself when I was 16. I quit school at 15, went to work. And they actually believe that you can become a man, or a man of character and strength, and succeed without going through these difficult times, like where you was homeless. And they think that you can do that you can bypass this. It's like the guy who says, I want six-pack abs. What's the quickest way to get six-pack abs?
Going to the gym.
It's like there's no quick way. I mean, life experience, like Jawad said there, and knowledge combined together. Like, you can read the books, but until you experience it, when you put that together with the knowledge, I believe that's where wisdom comes in, because you've actually experienced it. You understand what you went through from the knowledge you've gotten from either a mentor, a book, or whatever, and then you actually experience it. It's like going to school and studying for whatever you study for, but then actually going into the profession. Until you go into the profession, you have the knowledge, but you don't have the wisdom, which comes only from living and experience. So I don't believe there's any way that you can build in character and integrity. And it's a lifelong thing. I still go through character building situations, going through one right now. I don't like it, but I like the result. And I know that when you're going through it, there is the rewards on the other end. It's uncomfortable, but then how many people today, and that's a problem in our Western society, they're too comfortable. They have no adversity. There's too much pleasure. It's all about, the media shoves it down our throat. Pleasure, comfort, it's just everywhere. And then you can see that by the obesity and overweight. What is it, 75 to 80% of the people? And that's not to say how many of them are actually in shape. Even if they're not obese, can they climb 4 flights of steps? I mean, that's even tough for me, but still. So people think there's an easy route because we've made things so comfortable and easy for people. I just order DoorDash. I don't even have to go out to get food. Walk to the door to get it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, these things make our men weak.
You there? Yeah, I'm still there.
Yeah.
What I've learned is everything. I agree with everything you said. Just to add on to that, like you said, people are comfortable with being comfortable. And one of the things that I emphasized in the book is that you have to go through adversity. And one of the things you said, just to piggyback again, is the fact that in writing the book, I realized you have to have lived experiences. And the reason I know that is from what you said. I agree with you also. I said it before. If I were to go back to my 21-year-old self, 25-year-old self, even 35-year-old self, and express some of the wisdom that I've learned by this point at 40, 41, my 21, 25, 40-year-old self, or 35-year-old self still wouldn't necessarily be able to fully grasp what I'm trying to give to myself, because at that point in time, I hadn't had gone through the actual experience. One of the things that they say that is very true is when you have a goal and you're trying to achieve a goal, it's not necessarily achieving the goal that's the biggest gem. It's actually the journey towards achieving the goal is where you receive the most gems, or you receive the most wisdom and most knowledge, because you fall, you fail, you overcome. Now, if you were to have an idea, you want to have a task or have a goal, and you just snap your fingers and it happened, well, what did you learn? Just like you said with the DoorDash, if you just want to DoorDash, you press a couple of buttons, boop, boop, boop. But now let's say there's no DoorDash. There's no nothing where you have to grow your own crops now, where you have to, cook your own meat. Do you know how to do that? So it's one thing to be able to know how to cook for yourself and use DoorDash, but it's another thing where the only thing you know how to do is use DoorDash. So people are too comfortable. Society's making it that way because, again, back to consumerism, it's basically money spent. So I get it, and it is human nature to lean towards comfort. So I get it. But as a man, another thing that I stated in the book, my belief is searching for fun, constantly searching for fun, constantly searching for happiness and things like that, constantly looking to get lit and party and all that. That's a feminine trait, because a man knows work got to get done. If he doesn't do the work, nothing will get done. This is the reason how we got to the point where we are now in society, because men woke up and knew there's work that needs to be done. Not, I'm going to party, drink, party. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to never party, to never search for happiness, be happy. But everything, like you stated earlier, everything's in moderation. Everything has its place in its time. And just to go backwards real quick on what you said about Stoicism, you're right. I believe Stoicism is the mastery of your emotions, because in order to even practice Stoicism, you have to have control over your emotions. But a lot of people, they don't have that control or that power to control their emotions, so they talk down on it.
Yeah, we got Affy in the chat. Hey, Affy, glad you could be here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Affy Kingdom, peace, man.
Yeah. Talk about the Stoicism and people. Actually, men, our society has become so comfortable. A man almost has to actually actively seek out challenges. I mean, one of the things I do every day is I take a cold shower, and it's really cold. It's cold here in Missouri. I don't want to get in there every morning, but I just say I'm a man and I step in there, and it's cold. But that's a challenge to get in there every day, and that's a small thing, but it builds inner strength. I mean, you talked about it there. The joy truly is in the journey. I've reached a lot of goals in my life, and I've learned from reaching the goals long ago that when you reach them, if you think that's the whole of the, it lasts a couple hours, maybe a day or two, and then it's like you have to have another goal. If you're not enjoying the journey, which I didn't for years, it wasn't until probably the last 10 years of my life that I figured that out. I always heard that old saying, but it's so true. It's the things that happen along the way, the relationships you build, the people you meet, and the character that you get from striving toward that goal through the failures, the defeats, the disappointments, the disillusionments. But like you said, so many people now want the goal. They want the immediate pleasure without the steps along the way, and it leaves you empty. A man's happiness, at least for me, comes from my fulfillment. For example, I have 6 kids who I've raised by myself, 5 boys. I made a statement one time about did I always feel, we're talking about feelings, people are so into feelings. Did I always feel like getting up and taking them to school? Did I always feel like getting them, getting them out of bed? Did I always feel like taking them to the doctor when they were sick? Feel like cooking? Feel like doing this? No, I didn't. I said, but I did it because to me, that's love is a verb. It's an action. I love my kids. I did it. And I got bashed for that too. It's like, oh, you're raising your kids and you're like, it's a burden for you. People just didn't grasp what I was talking about. But I have such a sense of, I don't know how to explain it, appreciation or gratitude when I look at my boys. And when Affy and AV was here, they talked about how well my boys spoke about me. And on Christmas, they gave me a great gift. It was each of them wrote a letter, all my kids, about how they felt about me. So that was a great now. I was quite emotional when I read that. I didn't read it in front of the family. I took it upstairs and read it alone in my room. And that was a wonderful gift. So it's these things. It's not when you get out of school, get out of college, you meet this girl. so many people live the life of the future. They don't enjoy the present moment. They always think, when I get this, I'm going to be if you're not happy now, if we're not enjoying this now, you and I, we're not going to enjoy the big interview we do later, that when we become
Absolutely.
successful with it, because it's always now. And that if the viewers could grasp that, how important
well,
that
let
is.
me tap into that, because that's one of the models that I started from, like, the beginning when I first started my channel almost 5 years ago. The motto is live life live, in the present, because live life live, because the present is a gift. Now, what I mean by live life live is, like I stated, like you just stated, be present. Now, the reason why I emphasize being present is because not too long ago, maybe like less than 10 years ago, I realized the only part of your life that actually truly exists is the present. The past is in your mind,
Exactly.
and the future hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
So,
Tomorrow, when it's this time, it'll be present too. So yeah.
okay, so that's another statement. They say that's another statement that I try to teach on my channel, but I don't think a lot of people grasp it. Is the fact that the past, the present, and the future all occur at the same time. So when they hear that, they're like, "Oh, that's crazy." But what I mean is basically, long story short, anybody listening, basically what I said, if the time says it's 7:30 right now, right? When it was 7:25, 7:30 was in the future. When it was actually 7:30, 7:30 was in the present. When it was 7:35, 7:30 was in the past. But it's still the same 7:30. You understand? So you could do the same with yourself. I'm here talking right now to the camera, to Mark, but so this is in the present. But there was a point in time where this was in the future. So when I think like this, I tell guys, you need to set your future self up in the present. You need to throw your future self an alley-oop. What that could mean something simple as, like we stated, being consistent. You know what? I don't want to wake up and go to the gym and work out, or do my calisthenics, my pull-ups, my push-ups. But you know what? Let me do it today for my tomorrow body, for my future body. Because you're not going to see the result from day 1, day 5, or maybe even day 10. But day 170, you're going to be like, yo, like, wow, I can see the difference. And that was from you doing consistently, day by day, even though you didn't want to do it. So it's all about being consistent.
Yeah, and that's something, once again, and that comes from, I believe, from discipline, which comes from facing adversities, doing things. I mean, kids nowadays, I don't remember the last time I seen a kid climbing the tree, or playing in the dirt, or playing in the creek, building a dam, or running with we used to go out in the wood. I mean, just all the things we used to do as adventures, because most of them are behind a screen doing it, and they're living vicariously through Xbox and these different things.
Yes.
And I've seen it with my own kids, when they spend too much time on these games, it's almost like that pressure builds up inside them, because they're not being physical, but yet they're still having the emotions of a physical activity.
Yes, that's an excellent point. And not only are they playing games for so long, it's the type of games that these young males are playing. Like, I don't know if you've played any of these games, but I haven't played video games. Maybe
the kids do.
I mean, they have some of these RPG games, role playing games, where they're first person shooters. And to be honest, some of these video games that are first person shooter games, like, they remind me of the mass shootings that we have at schools and in these other places. Because I remember playing when I was maybe in my early 30s. Excuse me, I remember playing in my early 30s, and you can have a microphone and a headset, and I would hear 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds playing this game, and I'm like, as a 30-something-year-old, if I think this game is violent, and I can see how me constantly playing this game can make me think, you know what, I can perform a headshot, or I can, use, artillery. It's not a big deal. If I could think that at 30-something, imagine if I'm 12, and this is like all I know and all I do, to the point where I know the name of every gun and every type of bullet and so on and so forth. And if somebody gets me upset, because back to the emotions, they only know how to deal with emotions the way that their mother would. But what I say is, the most dangerous male in the world is a male who has feminine traits. Because a woman, if she's upset, what she'll do? She might smack you. She may even punch you. Of course, she shouldn't do that. It's disrespectful, but it's not going to kill you per se.
Right.
A man who's emotional, who doesn't know how to control his emotions, he's going to be like, you know what? You stepped on my shoes. I'm going to go get the gun from my trunk.
Yeah.
Sir, it's a crowded bar. You stepped on your shoe by accident. There's no reason for you to take someone's life and risk 25 years in jail. But emotional guys are like, no, but it's about the respect. You got to respect me. You shouldn't be stepping on my... They act like women. So that's why I feel like my book is so important, is because it's not for everybody, because like I said, to be a man is it's not easy. To be honest, it's very hard, because emotion is like fire. It's like a raging water. And to get control of that constantly every day, like it gets, I'm so stoic. It's to the point where some of my coworkers, maybe 4 years of me working there, like one of my male friends said a joke, and I laughed like, ha, ha, ha. And my female coworkers like, oh my, and I was like, oh, what happened? Do I have something in my teeth? They're like, no, I've known you for like 4 years, and I've never seen you smile before. Like, see, I seen your teeth, and I was like, oh, all right. But I get it, because every other guy that I work with, hey, Sheila,
Yeah.
how you doing today? Hey, nice hair. Nice. Oh, can I see your nails? And I'm the one who comes in and says, hey, good morning, everybody. What's my assignment?
Yeah, that reminds me of one of the shows I guess my son had on. I don't know if he's watching. When my younger son, he'll be 14 in February. And I guess there's constant these men are constantly laughing the whole time. I mean, it annoyed the hell out of me. Not that I don't like, you see, I smile when I talk to you and I laugh and I like to have a good time, but it's just constant laughing and joking and laughing and joking. And there's a time and a place for that. Yes. I have nothing against. I mean, when Affy and AB was here, we had a great time. We're joking and cutting up, and men do that amongst each other. Now, that's something else I want to ask you about. I know when I was a kid, and that's been a while back, I hung around with my dad and different people that hung around with men. There would be 15 men together, and they'd be drinking or whatever. Sometimes some weren't, but they talked about men stuff. And then as I got older, me and the boys, when I was 16, 17, we would stand around after work, maybe 10 or 15 of us, have a few beers, be talking on the corner as young men do. And I don't think that's as common now as it was back then, because everybody's behind their screens. But that was an every night thing. We would hang out and do things together, and that's just what we did. And we had fellowship amongst men. And if we did have a guy that was getting what we called pussy whipped, we'd rib him about it, give him a hard time about it, tease him about it. And we'd call 100%. Him out on that stuff. And nowadays it's like, if a guy's, we'll say, sucking up to a girl, it's like almost like this a normal thing. Or, well, we know what happens when they start doing that. Usually they get dumped. But absolutely, the point is, people, it's not called out like it used to be.
Nope. Because people are sensitive now. We live in a politically correct society where you can't even tell people the truth. I mean, to be honest, that's why I lost a lot of friends and family members, because I'm respectful, but I'm very honest. I'm not rude. I'm not blunt. I've learned to use tact. But the thing is, when my friends, family members, coworkers, when they speak to me, they know I'm going to give them the real. But what I've learned is a lot of people can't handle the real. A lot of people, the worst person you could have a conversation with is someone who lies to themselves. Someone who lies to themselves is not even in reality anymore. You understand? Yeah. But a lot of people won't even tell them that. They won't tell them like, hey, your viewpoints are kind of like off the wall. Like, they don't want to say that because, you know, that might hurt their feelings, or, you know what, I might need this person in the future, so I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Nah, man, you can't go around like that. Now, again, I'm not saying you should go around and calling out people's faults and, you know, pointing things out, being judgmental. Not at all. What I'm saying is, if somebody asks you for your opinion, again, not to be rude, but you have to find a tactful way to, you know, give an honest opinion, give your honest truth. But too many people are not used to hearing the truth, so they're sensitive to it. And now you have like you said, just to rewind, because you hit a nerve when you talked about guys laughing all the time, because this is what I see. Because even at my job, back to my job, I work around 80% women. I used to get called into the director's office often, right? This is unheard of. You know what I mean? I'm infamous at my job. I had to leave there, but I'm infamous there. But anyway, one day when I was waiting in the secretary's office, waiting to go into the director's office, you know, I guess she liked me a little bit, so she started conversing with me. And she said, Rosemond, you know what your problem is? I'm like, what is it? Like, I just don't get it. I was like, I never had this issue anywhere at any other job I've ever had ever in my life. She's like, you're just too aggressive. I'm like, I'm aggressive. Yeah. And I had to think, because my friends, I'm the youngest in my circle. Like, my friends are like 45, 40, 44. So when I was 16, my friends were like 18, 19, 20. When I was 12, my friends were 16, 17, 18. So when I think of aggressive and aggression, I think about those guys. Those guys are just assertive. They'll grab a chick's hand. They just say what they want without even thinking, who cares. So I wasn't like that, especially at work. Like I said, I had tact. But then I had to stop and think, because I don't compare myself to other males, but I had to in this situation, and just compare myself to those other males. And I realized those guys are always smiling. Those guys are always laughing at the dumbest stuff that these women say.
Passive, yeah.
Extremely passive. And I said, okay, if there's 10 guys and those 10 guys are passive, excuse me, if there's 9 guys and I'm the 10th, 9 of those guys are passive, and here I come number 10. Oh yeah, I'm gonna look extremely aggressive. Like, why isn't this guy? You know what they would say? Why do you look angry all the time? I said, I'm not angry.
I've heard the same thing. Yeah.
I'm not angry. I'm just not smiling. I don't have to smile all day. Like, and like as you notice, I smile on the camera. Like you said, when I'm with my good friends, you know, we're chopping it up. Of course, I'm gonna be smiling, and I might even do a belly laugh, like ha 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 ha. But when I'm in public, when I'm amongst, you know, a mixed crowd, I'm stoic for the most part. I might smirk. I might give you a small smile. You know, I'm not a robot, but it's not. I don't think it's in a man's nature to be constantly expressing happiness and joy and cheerfulness. And one of the things I said in my book too is to never kill your inner child. So I guess that's where it comes out, where I'm hanging out with my fellas. I can let my hair down. You know, I'm letting my inner child, like we could rib each other, even if we're 40 years old, 35 years old. You know, we could talk about that. But now too many people, they can be too serious, too sensitive, and they kill their inner child. So they don't even know how to have real fun anymore.
Yeah, my daughter tells me, she's 16. She says sometimes, she says, people think you have a resting bitch face. That's what
that's what I've been told. I didn't want to say it, but that's what people describe me as. Like, why you look angry? Like you look like you like. I'm like, I guess I have a male version of a resting bitch face.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I think though, and I've experienced what you talk about too. I have more trouble with the women. I have dealing with women in business on the telephone. I don't know how many times I've pissed them off or they got offended, but because I'm very assertive, I'm very direct. I'm not rude, but they take it as rude. And I don't know, you and I have probably different definition, or you and I have probably similar definition of what rude is. But I'm assertive. I tell you directly, look, this is what we're going to do. No, that's not what I told you. This is what I want you to do. And you start talking like that to women in business, 9 times out of 10, they get upset. I can talk to men. I can talk to men like that, and most of the time they don't get offended. Even I had a conversation the other day with a gay man. I assume I'll say a feminine man. He sounded very feminine. He may not have been gay, but he understood the way I was speaking to him, and we spoke at it was a tough situation subject, but yet we dealt with it. But I mean, I know this is going to sound terribly misogynistic, but I don't. And now let's define that word. A lot of people, they don't even understand what that word is. That's a strong prejudice or a hatred toward women. I don't hate women. I've risked my life for women physically. I've protected women to my own hurt. And I've been married more than once. I have kids, so I love women, but it's just amazing how the modern society throws that word around. When you disagree with something or you have a different view, all of a sudden you're misogynist or prejudiced. I mean, to say I don't want women on the front line in war, that I wouldn't want to fight beside one. I mean, is that prejudice or is that just being realistic?
Is that logic? Is that logic and reason? I don't know.
Logical?
I don't know.
I don't think that's. And
here's another one I say. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, here's another one I say is women and men should know their place. Now that'll piss them off. I know my place. My place is, as a man, is to jump on, is to stay on the Titanic when it goes down, or to protect a woman. Even if I'm out here in the street and there's a woman there and she's not mouthing off, starting crap, but some guy just that I know is not, they don't have a previous thing, just comes up and tries to assault her, I'm going to protect that woman.
Yeah.
Because that's who I am. And like you said earlier, I'm the guy that they call when they get in trouble. They want somebody like me. And I'm not the toughest guy in the world, but that's just, I grew up in that time. That's what we do. But yet it takes that type of personality to be able to do those kinds of things. I mean, you can't be passive. You can't be, you got to be strong. And women need you to be strong. And they talk about the equal thing too. I can walk down the street at night, even in a dangerous neighborhood. I may be nervous, but a woman can't do that. She's very vulnerable. She's more apt to be victimized in regards to what a man is. So we have our different characteristics and traits. And women need men, and men need women if we're going to survive as humanity. And this thing we got going against, and that's one of the reasons I like your book, it's not about bashing women. And a lot of the red pills, it seems like a lot of those guys get on the bashing women, pump and dump and all that crap. But we need each other, and we're better together than we are apart. And it seems like we got a division, someone trying to divide us here. Amongst many things,
you have to ask the question why. You always have to ask the question, why do they want to divide men and women? And the best way to answer that is to ask, follow the money. Who makes money when men and women are divided? Back to you, Go ahead.
80%. I think it's 80% of the men make the money, and then 80% of the women or something like that
Spend
spend the
it.
money.
Yep.
Yeah, women
That's the
spend
way it
more money
goes.
than men. Yeah.
Now, if women were with men, were in union with men, they would be consuming less because the
Yes, a
husband
lot
would be
less
like, "No,
tax
we don't
dollars.
need to buy that," and also be less taxes. So you always have to look about, you always have to look at where the money is and so on and so forth. But to backtrack
Yeah.
as far as the communication style, when you say you speak to women or even some men or some males, and they be like, "Well, why are you talking so rude, or why are you so disrespectful?" When it comes to women, when you talk to women, especially in business, the thing is not just women in business, but women in general. Like we stated, not just males don't grow up with their father in their homes or a man figure. Women also don't grow up with a male or father figure in the home. So that being said, the young girl is used to talking to her mother, her sister, her younger brother, who has feminine traits, her grandmother. So I say that to say, males and females have different communication styles. For lack of a better term, women talk with emotions. They have
Right.
certain tones, emotional tones, whereas men have no tone. It's atonal. So it's like, so when you speak to a woman, especially in business, you just talk to business. Okay, tomorrow we're gonna go to the meeting. It's at 5 o'clock. I'm gonna need you to bring this, this, and this. All right. Are you just call me before you? She might look on the phone like, well, that was rude. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask how
Yeah.
my day was, and he knew that my son had a soccer practice yesterday. As a man, especially during in business, I don't care about that. We're here to talk
Yeah.
about boom, boom, boom. Let's now. If you are my cousin and we happen to be doing business, maybe I might do that. But the point I'm making is when it comes to men talking to women outside of their relationship spectrum, a lot of women don't understand men and why they speak the way they speak. Like, because a lot of the reasons why I got called into the office was never because of something that I did or never because of any words that I said. It was mostly because of the tone that I used when I
Yeah.
said what I said. Oh well, when Rosemond said that to me, he made me feel like I was stupid, like I didn't know what I was doing. All I said was you forgot to add two blades to the count sheet. But what I've also learned from me working around women is that I've learned that my tone is authoritative. I don't do it purposely, but the way that I talk
Yeah.
with a certain what's the word I'm looking for? A certain demeanor, a level of respect that I demand just from my tone. Like it's like
Right.
no nonsense. And a lot of women are little girls on the inside. So when I
Yeah.
come through, I almost give them that dad voice, like, oh no, Rosemond is coming. Hold on. And a side note that I'll say is someone who hears this might be like, oh wow, they must have really hated you, Rosemond. It was actually the opposite. See, women are funny. So in public, amongst at meetings and stuff like that, they'd be on we don't like Rosemond. He's too mean.
Right.
But when I would speak to these women privately by myself, like if they would speak masculine to my other male coworkers, hey, didn't I tell you need to da da da? This is how they talk to the males. When they talk to me, hey Rosemond, hey, I was thinking, and I'd be like, you in my head, I'm like, you were just talking real masculine to that dude over there. Why you all soft when you come talk to me? But then I realized when you really have masculine energy and you stand in it and you're consistent with your masculine energy, a woman has no choice but to go into her feminine. Mind you, I'm in New York. I live in New York, so I've met masculine women. Even
Yeah.
the
Oh, I
masculine
bet.
women, they tone down their masculinity when they speak to me, because they know a masculine woman really knows she can't butt heads with a real masculine man because he won't
Well,
even he won't even take it. Go ahead.
don't you think that a lot of women are becoming more masculine, getting more into the masculine because we have such few masculine men and they don't feel safe? I know a lot of guys blame the women, but like you said earlier, to touch on that, men have allowed this to come to pass. I mean, they're the ones that make the laws. They have been, so they pass these laws, maybe with all good intentions to protect women and children. But it's gotten to the point where women, and you said that too. A woman a lot of times don't. It's not what you say; it's how she hears how she feels about what you say. And they're passing laws that where a woman has certain powers over men, especially in marriage and divorce.
Mm,
When you marry a woman in the U.S. or in the West, you're marrying the courts too. And the
yep.
problem is, I've seen this happen. I've seen women get angry to me. I've had it happen to me, get angry, and because either you won't be with them again or whatever happens to be, they'll make false accusations
Mm-hmm.
against you, or they'll say you did something. I've seen this didn't happen to me, but I've seen this one woman that I knew, I dated her. She had a boyfriend, threw him in jail, and then down there the next day trying to get him out. So when they're
Wow.
emotional, they can't handle this power. I mean,
Ex-
it's good that, of course, men shouldn't be beating women. Like when I grew up, the drinking neighbor over there would hit his wife at night. There was never nothing said about it. But
mhm,
of course, that's wrong. But
mhm.
nowadays, it's gotten to the other point where I know men personally who've gotten beaten up by their wife and then couldn't do anything because the police come and they'll throw them in jail. Somebody has to go to
Yep.
jail.
Yep.
So this is a problem here too. As I said, though, men with good intentions to protect women and children pass these laws, but now it's kind of turned around against us.
Mm, mm. And that's why guys, young males have to learn how to control their emotions. That's their best bet. Because
Yeah,
even if it's not with women, it could be with police officers. Because what I wrote in my book is a lot of these young males who grew up with no fathers, no man figure, they grew up with a lack of real discipline. Excuse me. They grew up with a lack of a true disciplinarian.
right.
Because nowadays the saying, wait till your dad gets home or wait till your father gets home,
Ah,
and
yeah,
that's out the window. That doesn't exist
yeah.
anymore, because I
There's
remember growing
yeah,
up like that. Because
yeah,
when I think about it, my mother, back to male and female dynamics, I got to a certain age, let's say 10, 11, 12, where my mom, even if she beat me, it really didn't really do nothing. To be to be honest, like the older I got, the more I wish she would beat me instead of just beating my ear. But anyway, I say that to say, back to male female dynamics, my mom could do whatever or try to beat me, but it's like I never really wanted to go toe to toe with my father, because it's another man. Like my mom, if she beat me, it would be like with a belt, but my father beat like. I mean, my father never hit me. He never punched me like that. But as a kid, you never know that. Like, your father's
yeah.
strong. He's bigger than you. So it's like, wow, I really don't want to see him get upset, because my father always controls his emotions. So my father's the type, like, I barely see it. He's what's the word I'm looking for? He's jovial. He's not childish, but he's like the life of the party. He likes to have a good time. He's not always smiling,
Right,
but when he's in a social event, he brightens up the mood in the area.
right.
So yeah, I think guys just need to learn that. They don't have that example. So with that being said, it's very hard for guys to be real men now, because when they do try to become real men, they're chastised for it. They're called misogynistic. They're
Yeah,
being told that's not what a real man does. So I'm not gonna lie, a lot of these boys are lost, and in order for them to be saved, number one, they have to realize that they're in a predicament. Because I have friends that are single, that are sons of single mothers, and even when I try to tell them certain things, certain traits that they exhibit, and I try to tell them, like, it's because you ain't grow with a man in the house, they bring up their feminine traits. They become emotional. Oh no, what do you know about that? And it's like, well, how about you just sit down and just think for a second, just think logic and think with reason, and not just immediately jump into your emotions. So it is what it is.
right. Yeah, you become part of what you're around. I know my daughter, she's 16, and I talk to her about how young boys are. Now she dates, and she has a hard time. Goes right along with what you're talking about in your book as a solution for this. So many of these guys cry in front of her. They beg. I mean, it just, she meets a guy, and then they'll date some, and then it's a month or 2 months, and they're becoming emotional towards her. And I've had her on the show before. She'll tell you she doesn't like it. How does it make her feel? She doesn't feel safe with a guy like that. One of the things I ask them when they come, I make them meet me. I make them shake my hand. And the last time I said, if you're out with my daughter and some guy gets in her face, what are you going to do? Well, there's only one of them that said he would physically handle the situation. So,
What the
and
rest say? What they gonna do? Call the cops? Run away? What they gonna do?
they didn't know what to say.
Oh, wow.
They just didn't. They don't know what to do because, well, and you can't really blame them because they don't have anybody in the house, or if they have a father there, I do a lot of work with clients in their homes. That's where the business takes place, and I do the work for them. But how many times I hear this? Let's go ask the boss. I mean, I
Oh,
hear that all the time. Go
wow.
ask the boss. I got to ask the boss. Well, wait till the boss gets home. And it's the man talking about the woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So, that's kind of, and then the kid sees this growing up. So he sees his father supplicating to the
And he
woman.
thinks it's
That's,
natural.
yeah, that's not to say that you shouldn't take your wife into consideration and actually
Of course.
discuss things with her, because women have an intuition men don't have. And if
Absolutely.
if you have a good woman, And she says, I just don't feel right about it. Even if everything looks logical to you, you better take a step back and listen to her. That's what I think. So
Absolutely.
it's nothing against women, but even the conversation we're having here, many women today and a lot of feminized men will look at this as a couple of prejudiced, sexist, misogynists having a conversation.
Because feminine men and women in general are not accustomed to receiving constructive criticism. Because we're not saying anything like, women are less than and we don't need women.
No.
Just to tap into that, that's something else that I wrote in my book, is that so the average person, when they hear that saying that, men need women, women need men, they may be like, well, yeah, you're right. I need a woman to complete me. No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's
What
not
I'm
it.
saying is, you as a grown male have to build yourself into a man, 100% real man. And then when you, by that time you'll have a program, you'll have goals, you'll have, accomplishments that you want to achieve. And at that point, you'll be able to invite a woman into your life so that she could be a proper helpmeet to whatever it is that you're trying to do. So a man has to have a plan before he can even invite a woman into his life. But a lot of guys, they don't have a plan. They're too comfortable. They don't know what to do with themselves. So for a woman, oh no, that's what I wanted to say. A lot of guys need to learn how to defend themselves. Because when you ask these guys, what would you do if somebody, is in my daughter's space, so on and so forth, a lot of guys can't even defend themselves, let alone someone else. So, when I say defend, I'm not saying you got to know a full discipline of martial arts or, boxing or anything like that, but learn something. Learn something to defend yourself. I'm not to say to become a bully, but to defend yourself if somebody attacks you or the people that you're with. A lot of guys don't do that. They don't have anybody in their ear to tell them that. So it's hard, man. It's hard.
Do you think it's because, and I agree with you 100%, because when I talk about defending yourself or standing up or some of the situations I've been into, once again, I'll have younger people, not to my face, usually by messages on something I posted, talk about it being violent and hateful or different things like that. But I think it's because we live in such a, I mean, a lot of people don't think the U.S. is safe, but I've been out of the country many times. Third world, I lived in a third world country, and it's safe here compared to a lot of places in the world. It's very dangerous. They don't realize they live in these neighborhoods, let's say $500,000 homes, the perfect yards and all this, and the police are there in 5 minutes. They patrol the neighborhood every 2 hours, but that's not 80% of the world. And so they think, well, you just call a cop. Well, I've been in a lot of situations where there was no police around. They weren't going to come there even if you called. You got to be able to, and that gives you a feeling of confidence that you get in no other way. And your woman, if she's with you, you don't have to say anything about it, but she's going to know because you have an air of confidence because you know that you can handle yourself in basically any situation. I mean, I've been robbed by gunpoint. I've had to physically knock people down because they tried to rob us, different things like that. So, but I've learned, I used to be an amateur and professional boxer, so I learned that it come in handy later. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because, like you said, you don't have to be just to have something. It gives a man some confidence. I think we're all naturally, we've been warriors for thousands of years since we've been here. Now we've come into a time where, I believe we have an illusion where we don't think we need warriors anymore, but that's quite I mean, I don't agree with that. Not that everybody should be out fighting. Look how people enjoy watching boxing, MMA, and all that, because it touches a part of each man that he has within him until you find a way to express that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the ring or in some kind of physical fight, but some way you have to express that inherent desire to express that warrior.
To compete in
To
conquer.
compete, in some way, physically, I believe. It's like I spoke about before with the games. They're competing, but they're not using their body, and I can see the tension build up in them. They become short-tempered. Because they're not out there expressing that in football, basketball, whatever it happens to be.
You're right.
For a man, I think that's very important.
You're absolutely right, because I remember writing that in my book about physical contact and playing contact sports, because that's a part of manhood. Physical contact is a part of manhood, meaning like I used to think back, like when I used to play basketball, people think basketball is not a physical sport. Well, It's especially now, it's not a physical sport. You just tap somebody on the wrist and it's a flagrant foul. But
Yeah.
back in the 80s and 90s, when I used to play basketball, you're in the paint, somebody might throw an elbow in your rib, or somebody really might hack your arm, and or what like basically it was a very physical game. Even with football,
Right.
you never wanted to cross the middle because they would just chop your head off. But I say that to say, growing up, I remember playing sports, getting hit on the football field, getting an elbow on my rib. Like in that second, I may not have liked it, but afterwards, I kind of appreciated. Like, yeah, like this is what it is. This is physicality. This is competition. It's like, okay, I got to get you back for that now. You know what I mean? We're going back and forth. It's not a ow, you hurt me. I'm gonna tell on you. Call the coach. Go stop the
Yeah.
game. Nah, this is part of the game. And you take one elbow, you could take two, you could take three, to the point where you don't even feel the elbows no more. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of guys don't want to go through that endurance. They want
But
the
they
easy
don't.
way out.
Yeah, they don't understand that there's something that men get from that, and women don't understand, and that's okay because I don't understand a lot of things about women because I'm never going to be a woman. But there's something about like with me or the football field or basketball, getting in there and it's dangerous. You got a chance of getting hurt, and then and you might get hurt, but
Mm-hmm.
afterwards you get a feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction. And you understand it, but a
Yes, sir.
person has to experience it. When I
Mm-hmm.
spar with the boys here occasionally, I'll spar with them, and there's something about that when I get done, even if they got the best of me or whether they did or didn't, I challenged myself, and I feel it's a sense of fulfillment and almost a rush that you
Mm-hmm.
can't get in because you're risking yourself. You never know
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen. You might get knocked out. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
You just never know. So that's something men miss out. And actually, I think they're discouraged. When I was growing up, and I used to wrestle with my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They'd pick on me, and the
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood kids. We'd play games and
Nope.
we'd wrestle and different stuff. And of course, I got bullied. I don't think that's something people really don't like when I say that bullying isn't such a bad thing.
It's not.
I got bullied. I'm glad I got bullied. I bullied some other people. I went back
Mm-hmm.
later when I grew up and made amends for it. But most of
Mm-hmm.
them just said, we were kids. It's just a pecking order. It's just what
Exactly.
happens. It made me a better person. Actually, I was afraid to fight, and I got bullied so much, and the humiliation. I finally thought, man, it can't be any worse getting beat up than the way I feel for a couple of weeks. So I found somebody to
Exactly.
teach me how to fight. I had my first fight. I lost, but I felt great because I stood up
Mm.
for myself.
Exactly. That's the point. It's not always necessarily getting the W as far as like, defeating your
Right.
opponent. Sometimes it's just, going through it. Just
Yeah.
going through it. Not and like you said, when you play a sport, especially a physically contact sport, you are risking your health, whether
Yeah.
hurting yourself or even dying.
Yeah.
And that's like you
Football is
said,
extremely dangerous.
it's a bit of a rush. It is a bit of
Yeah.
a rush, and I think that's what men should look for. Like, excuse me, grown males who want to become men. Men live their life on the edge. They don't live their life safe and cautiously, and because things don't get done that way. You have to live on the edge and be uncomfortable. You have to be willing for the change, willing to
Right.
try something new, to do something that, what, I'm not sure. I might get hurt, but you know what? I think I can get through it though. That's what the most important thing is.
Well, yeah, and it's obvious. Look at these people; they're seeking out extreme sports. And I heard Vietnam veterans stated that they felt more alive in country than they did when they were back here to the States, when they knew they
Wow.
might die. And that's
Yeah.
part of being a man. I mean, some
Yep.
people, the modern generation, might think this is ridiculous, but when you're risking and when it's when a man needs risk. But now
Yes.
in our nation, he has to seek out risk. He has to seek out he has to seek out adversity. And I think where we're going now with this, we have so many people complaining about, I want to be called this, I want to be called this, I want you to treat me this way, because we have no adversity. We actually create adversity, which really, for lack of a better way, doesn't amount to a hill of beans. We're
Nope.
fighting over things that really are not important. If we had a war, these things they wouldn't even make the headlines. But being not that I want a war because I have kids of fighting age, and I
Mm.
don't believe in usually it's for the government. But the point I'm making is we need bigger fish to fry here or something
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
we're having this big adversity over things that are like it's like we create adversity. Unless we have it, we create it. And some of the adversity they create to me seems quite ludicrous.
Well, I believe it's all a distraction. What's the old saying? Give them bread in a circus, and the
Yeah,
government can do whatever they want. So that's a whole
yeah,
other conversation, a whole different level. And that's one of the reasons why I started my channel. And I originally called it the Red Pill Chauvinist. Red pill meaning it didn't even have to do with women. Red pill for me at that time, 5, 6 years ago, was being able to see past society's narrative. of what
Right.
they want you to think, what they want you to believe, coming up with your own questions, and then seeking out your own answers. One of the things I used to say all the time on my channel is, don't believe anything I say. Do your own research. The reason I emphasize
Yeah.
that is because who am I? You don't know me. But hey, if what
Right.
I'm saying to you resonates in some way, shape, or form, maybe you should look into that and research it, and then discover it for yourself. Because, and I learned that from my younger brother. There are times where we'd be talking, he'd be like, "What does that word mean?" I'm like, "You got a phone, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right, look it up." "No, why don't you just tell me?" I'm like, "No, because if I just tell you, you're just gonna know it for now. But you got to put some work in to
Right.
gain the knowledge, and then it will stick." Of course, he never looked up the word, because the younger generation, the egos are big. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Long story short, the reason why my young brother, I believe, has tendencies of a male who was raised under a single mother, even though my father was around, is the fact that once my younger brother was born, maybe like around the time he was maybe 2 or 3 years old, my mother had to actually go out to work. Prior to that, my mother was a housewife. She just stayed home, took care of me and my brothers. So I say that to say my younger brother saw less of my father than me and my older brother did.
Yeah.
And because my younger brother is 6 years apart from me, that was my mother's last child, and that's her baby. So she held my younger brother, right here under her bosom.
Right.
Anytime myself and my older brother would be going somewhere, even when my younger brother was, let's say, 10 years old and I was 16, my father would be like, "Okay, yeah, take your little brother." And my mother would be like, "No, no, no, no. He's too young. No, 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 I don't want them." And it's like, looking back at my mother, what she was kind of doing is like, she didn't want my younger brother being like me and my older brother, because me and my older brother were masculine. And because of
Yeah.
that, we kind of stuck more closer to my father.
Right.
So it's like, and I say that, and I believe that's that was her reasoning, because even nowadays, when my younger brother would do something, and I tell my mom, like, "Yo, so and so did X, Y, Z. Like, why would he do that? He's a 30-something-year-old man." My mother would be like, "Well, if I was him, I would do the same thing." And my
Uh-huh.
response would be, "You don't see nothing wrong with the fact that that your 30-something-year-old son would do the same thing as a 70-year-old woman? That doesn't make sense." And she just doesn't get it, but I see it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we become part of what we're around. We're heavily influenced by our parents, and depending on which one influences us the most. In my case, my mom, I think she stayed home till I was about 5, started school, and then she worked second shift, and my dad worked first. So
Mm,
I didn't see my mom too much except on the weekends, and my dad cooked dinner every night, and he was the one I spent the most time with.
mm,
And like you said, my mom, she one time I stuck my tongue at her when I was about 5, and she caught me, slapped my
mhm.
face. So I never did that again. But yeah, my dad, I heard the old, yeah, wait till your dad comes home, and yeah, I got the belt quite a few times. It didn't hurt me. Well, I mean, it hurt at the time, but
Yeah.
looking back in retrospect, and you talked about it, some people not having respect for the police. Now, it didn't keep me from breaking the law, but it did keep me fearful of the police.
Hmm.
So I did have respect
Same
for the
here.
police. Yeah, and I knew that if they told me to do something, I would do it, and I didn't. Now I never did call them sir. For some reason, when I would say yes sir or no sir, it sounded sarcastic. So, but I spoke to them the
Hmm.
same way, with respect, like I would my father. And now my father never hit me either, but I never would have. I never would have provoked him to do that. I did see him
Mm.
slap backhand my brother at the dinner table once because he got smart, and I didn't want any part of that. So I never spoke to him like that. But when I got old enough to where I probably could have whipped my dad, I wouldn't even thought of it because of the respect I have for him. Now, young
Absolutely.
boys, teenage boys, because I've raised these 5 by myself, they get to the point, and I think you mentioned it, maybe about girls getting rebellious. They get rebellious too, and if you
Hmm.
don't stand up to them, they will run the house. Now,
Yes.
it doesn't
Absolutely.
mean you have to beat them up or anything, but now what happens with a single mother with teenage boys is, and I've seen this, and the boys tell me about it also. They will talk to their mother just like, well, say terribly. They'll talk,
Yeah.
and there's nobody around to, yeah, they just don't. They need to be. It's almost like kids say, "Do you love me enough to stop me from destroying
Mm,
myself?" Because kids
mm.
are a lot like women. They think emotionally until they get to be a certain age. They're very emotional until they get to be a certain age, and they start
One thousand
understanding
percent.
that. Yeah, but that's what I've experienced. Well, hey,
That,
it's
that,
been
and that,
great. Go ahead.
well, one last thing that I'll say, that I wanted to emphasize before. It's very important. That's why I brought up two things. One, A man a grown man builds himself up to be a man to 100%, and then a woman could come in and be his helpmeet and bring him to 110%, 120%. That's what I mean by man needs a woman, and a woman can make a man better. He can bring him past 100%. As far as disciplinarian, a lot of young males, young boys don't have a man in the house, don't have a father in the house. Their first disciplinarian is the police, which is the reason why a lot of young males have problems with listening to male authority. Funny thing is, my book Hacker, I have an audio version of it, and people ask me, well, why did you use a woman's voice? Why didn't you use a man's voice? Because you're writing a book about women, but it's for male readers. I said, yeah, but I realized that a lot of males are not men. It's number one. So I have to cater to the grown male. And I know that the grown male has issues listening to male authority. So if I put my Hacker audio version book with a guy with a deep voice, it might make these guys feel uncomfortable. Like, well, why is his voice got to be so deep? Why does he talk with that tone? So I figured, you know what? Let me put it as a woman because they're more comfortable listening to a woman, hearing a woman's voice, telling them what to do, teaching them. So, yeah, the first disciplinarian is usually the police, and that's why a lot of young males, young boys are not disciplined, whether it be working out, whether it be in their diet, whether it be in educating and not in attaining knowledge. So this book right here, True Male Nature 101, How Sons of Single Mothers Can Think Like a Real Man. Like I stated before, I said it in the book, and I literally mean this. Any male that reads this book and follows its principles and guidelines will indubitably become a real man. Check it out.
Yeah, I'd say any male for sure. Because like I said, I benefited from it. I thought it was great. I thought it applied to all men, not just young men from single mother homes. So, and now where else can we find you at?
You can find me on YouTube at The Real Man Channel, REALMAN, The Real Man Channel, and on Instagram, and on Instagram you can find me on True_MF_Nature, True MF Nature 101.
Well, great. It was great having you here. I could talk all night. I have a meeting to go to, but this has been really. Okay. I didn't even get to the questions much about the book that I had specified.
we could do a part 2 anytime. I'll be back in the States in 2 weeks. I'm actually in Colombia right now.
Oh, you're in Colombia now. We got good Wi-Fi connection down. Where are you now down there?
I'm in Medellin, Colombia.
Ah, it's one of my favorite places. I've been there.
And I'll be going to Cartagena in a few days. I like Cartagena too. Cartagena is pretty nice.
Yeah, I've been there a few times also. Yeah, it's a great place. I call that the land of beautiful women. All right, well, it was wonderful having you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Wish you the best. Take care.
Yes, sir. All right.